Hi, I'm Sumner. I'm Head of Organic Performance here at Roast. I'm here today to talk to you about the brain's secret to success and by how testing you can use heuristics and biases to create content that converts. Hopefully you enjoy it. We are obviously moving into a new age where we're spending more time online, of which it's estimated that people are spending 3.5 hours a day and growing. That's why it's no surprise that people and brands are spending more, with an estimated increase by 93% in the last 5 years alone, which comes with its own challenges. The people on the other side of these screens are actually paying a lot less attention, with attention spans estimated to be decreasing by 25%, which is a major challenge. And that's why you have to think about the things that you can use to basically cut through. For those brands that do cut through, they report for every pound they put into search marketing that they get 22 back as ROI. So the reward is huge. So to understand the brands that have understood this and know how important it is, you only have to look at big tech brands such as Amazon, Google and Netflix. They see these cognitive biases as paramount to their mission, and look how far they've become because of it. And you only have to look at certain brands that have lost market share and look to reports of having kind of friction within their marketing experience as to the cause of this. And I don't want to call them out directly, but yeah, it's really, really important not to have friction. And what I'm here today to talk to you about is these biases. What they are really are the heuristics, and I'll come on to explain a bit more about those, as well as cognitive biases. The brain naturally uses different techniques to make decisions faster, and this is obviously so important online where we're making thousands of decisions every day. And what the brain uses to make these decisions easier is something called heuristics. Slide 6. So what heuristics are mental shortcuts. They help us make complex decisions simpler. They make these decisions with less resource and less energy, and it enables us to make more decisions faster. So we've got a lot to be thankful for heuristics for. And there are a huge amount of heuristics that have been confirmed by the clever scientists and PhD students around the world. And there are 50 different heuristics that are proven, and this number is growing. And you can find these below. What heuristics are mental shortcuts. These are great, but they can be influenced by bias. And bias basically leads to influenced decisions. But for today, I wanted to unpick what you may think about bias in terms of things in kind of more wider culture, and actually focus on this much more about kind of cognitive processes. So heuristics are great, but as I said, they can lead to biases, and biases can lead to influence behind our decisions, and that can lead to errors. And this is obviously all the more at play when we are making decisions online. Google knew this was super important, and that's why they commissioned a huge piece of quantitative research, which they called the messy middle. What this pulled in was 31,000 participants. It passed these participants into 10 different distinctly unique bias scenarios, which basically tested the biases in 310 different simulations. And it's quite simple how they did this. The different participants were basically shown different ad copy or search messaging, and they were asked if they preferred scenario A or scenario B. So what they found was 6 different biases at play online. What these are category heuristics, authority bias, social proof, power of now, scarcity bias, and the power of 3. What these are, category heuristics means that you show that you are a good provider of this service, and as a result you're a good indication of being a good example within the category. Authority bias shows that you are an authority in this space. The third one, social proof, which means that other customers that have bought respect your service, and as a result they like you enough to recommend you. The power of now means that by making a decision as a customer you can get an added advantage. Scarcity bias shows that by not making the decision now that it's going to run out. And then finally, the power of 3. You only have to think about delivery and the likes of ASOS and Amazon to see how important this is. Another really, really interesting finding of this is that the messy middle looks to turn the conventional marketing funnel on its head, and shows that things online are slightly different. What they basically recommended is that we as customers are constantly in a buy journey, going between 2 different kind of headspaces. one of exploration and one of evaluation. And when a brand exhibits the different biases, it can then pull a customer out of this headspace into being ready to buy a product. And as I mentioned, this basically looks to turn the marketing funnel on its head and suggests that people are always in market to buy a product when a brand shows these different biases. So this is really, really important. There are also some other really key takeaways that are important to share. The first one shows that presence produces preference. And what this means is, as a brand, you have to have really, really good visible search results, whether this is through paid or organic. The second one is perceived value beats loyalty. And what this means is online is fierce when it comes to pricing. So you have to really, really think about your pricing and make sure that you are competitive, because this will look to improve loyalty. The third one is don't underestimate a newcomer. We as humans have a tendency to value new and shiny things, and that's why new disruptor brands are very, very good at disrupting. The final one is brands still matter. This goes back to my point before about authority bias, where we look to trust brands that we know as an authority within their category. And that's why having a strong brand is as important as it ever has been. But I wanted to stop to share with you a bit of a story of Tony Chocolonely. I wanted to ask you guys, who has seen this guy on your local supermarket shelves? I certainly have. This is clearly Tony Chocolonely. And what I wanted to suggest to you is the way that we've all got to know Tony and recognise him is via different heuristics. And these heuristics have helped create familiarity. So you may go into a local shop and you may see Tony Chocolonely there. You may think, yeah, fair enough, looks like a really, really good quality chocolate, and having good quality ingredients is something I really care about. Secondly, you think that he's an advocate of fair trade and understanding the supply chain that goes into producing the chocolate, which is something, again, that customers really care about. Thirdly, it may be 10% off or only £3, and value is obviously something that's super important when looking for a bar of chocolate. And then finally, in terms of the branding, you may think that it reminds you of Willy Wonka. We all know from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory how important and how good Willy Wonka is at making chocolate. And what I want to share with you here is these are all amazing examples of different heuristics that we as humans make to understand a brand and make them the brand that we choose. And these are availability, representativeness, anchoring, and attribute substitution, all well-tested heuristics. You only have to look online to see these more at play. So when you go in the search results, you can see here on desktop or mobile, you can see that different vendors are shouting about its ingredients being milk chocolate, that it's being sold directly by Google, that there are 4,000 five-star reviews by customers just like you, that for some vendors they're offering a sale, others are offering it for only £1.89, which is a really, really great cost saving, as well as other vendors are offering free delivery. And what I wanted to show you is that you can see these in the search results as amazing examples of all of the different cognitive biases that Google looked to prove as part of the messy middle. And you can see why they paid so much to commission such a huge quantitative study. By thinking about heuristics and cognitive biases, it's no surprise that Tony has been able to report a 40% improvement year on year. So what I'm here to show you now is how you as a brand can test the inclusion of heuristics and biases in your marketing plans. So the first step is really understanding how you can test in a really, really clear and objective way. So the main goal of testing is to basically create conditions that look to prove out which version is clearer, more relevant, and performs better than the other. And this looks to enable you to connect these with customers to make sure your performance is as optimal as possible. And there are 4 distinct different stages where you look to test this. The first one is data preparation, making sure you've got all the data in the right place. You then get into creating 2 different groups where you can do some split testing. You can then measure the result or uplift attained by running this test. And then finally, once you find out which condition is best performing, you can then scale those changes across all your pages. In terms of how you do data preparation, the first and the most important step is benchmarking, just so you've got an accurate gauge as to what performance was like before you started making changes. You then can get 2 groups of pages and you should do this in a randomized way to make sure that you're comparing pages that are equal to one another, and that's when you're ready to go into the next stage. And this is where you start basically getting two groups of pages, one of which is a challenger and one of which is the control group. The challenger is obviously the group of pages that you're going to make the changes on, and this is where you can do the split testing to compare which one performs better. You then obviously run the test with the changes of improvement to the challenger. You obviously then have to make sure that the test runs for long enough for you to reach significance. Significance is really a statistical measure of which one is better performing, and you have to kind of do this more than for a period of time just to make sure that the statistic threshold is met. Obviously, once you find out which condition is better performing, the important thing is kind of scaling those changes across all your pages to make sure that you have the best performing landing pages visible across the whole site. And there are some relatively kind of good ways you can do this using a CMS bulk uploader, which enables you to make the changes all at the same time. What I've just spoken about may sound pretty complex, and thankfully there are some amazing tools that help you with this kind of process to enable you to kind of do it much easier and basically bring a testing methodology into the way you do things as a brand. So I've run through how to test. I think the important thing now is to think about where you can test. And we could have spoken a little bit about search results, landing pages, and actually kind of content as a whole. So what I wanted to kind of share with you is some useful ways you can test these three different touch points. The first one really is your search results. And here, as I kind of mentioned before, this is where you can look to test the different biases that Google approved with its messy middle. And you can do this in two main areas. The first one is your organic metadata, and the second one is in your paid ad copy. And in here I've shared a bit of description as to your character limits and the ways that you can look to include different biases. And we at Rose obviously found this to be super impactful and useful, so much that we looked to create a tool which essentially looks to scan metadata and ad copy for their inclusion for the different biases. And we saw some really great uplift, as well as the ability to run our competitors' ad copy and metadata through this was really, really useful in showing us kind of gaps and gave us kind of insight as to what we should look to change. So now once you've tested everything to do with your search results, the smart next step is really looking to connect these with the landing page, at which point I think it's important just to stop that since my talk, Google has come out and expanded its messy middle findings to the landing pages, so I recommend that everyone goes and reads the Decoding Decisions Messy Middle Part 2, because I think it's an amazing piece of evidence as to kind of what we shared on the talk. So, how you can test your landing pages is kind of moving into kind of the CRO, conversion rate optimization territory, but essentially what you want to do is test the landing pages for the best performing variant. And the way that you can do this is first of all looking at the structure of the landing page to look at what's included. In here you can bring in some kind of widely accepted elements that look to kind of drive a much better user experience, such as breadcrumbs, such as reviews. You need to make sure that your copy is concise and gives a crisp definition, and also then all of the different elements that we look to recommend to make sure that your page is search friendly. The second piece of that is really looking as to how you can promote a strong user experience, mainly on mobile. And the way that you can look to do this is, first of all, something called Bluff, which is bottom list up front. And that is a piece proven by heat maps as to how we on mobile look to scan through a page when on the go, to basically look for all the most important parts first. So I really recommend doing some reading on this, and think about how people are going to be reading your page on mobile. And that takes me on as to how you should think about speed to make sure your mobile experience is as fast for people on the go. So what we haven't probably spoken about as much as the other sections, but I think it's a really important point to be made, is that you need to make sure that across all your different own touch points, that the way your brand communicates is consistent. So I want you to think about tone of voice, and the way you can do this is you can create a tone of voice framework, and what that looks to do is make sure that you are communicating with your customers in a really, really consistent way. So that basically means that your comm strategy is consistent. Looking at what I said about owned media, this looks beyond the website to your social, to how you're working with other partners, as well as even things like bus stops above the line and off-site. The main aim really to make sure that everything is written and communicated in a really consistent way. Finally, email. I haven't spoken about this that much, but again, with all of the findings from the tests you've run in the search results on your landing pages, I really recommend trialing them in email. This is where you can look to really drill down on the similarities, but also the nuance between new customers and existing customers. And again, it kind of takes us to the point of really understanding what works by testing rather than gut feel. So just to kind of recap, the main aim really is to kind of test across kind of key customer touch points, whether this is in the search results, the landing page, but also taking these findings and rolling them out across all of your different own platforms. And the improvement can be seen across metrics. And to look at those KPIs in a bit more detail, you can essentially track the improvement by testing across all of your different KPIs. Whether this is the click-through from the search result to the landing page, the traffic that landing page gets, the amount of leads and conversions that page gets as a result, and more importantly, the revenue driven. But more importantly, from my opinion, is essentially how, by having a testing approach, you can save your team's time by repurposing assets in the most impactful way possible. So, just to round up, there's 4 key things to remember. The first one is around heuristics. Heuristics are the mechanics that we as humans use to make decisions, so we've got a lot to be thankful for them for. The second one is about biases. Biases are being used online more so than ever, so you have to think about these, be aware of them, and use them where appropriate. The third one is around having a testing mindset. This is more important than anything else. You need to really test what works and understand, using numbers, what the best performing combination of touch points is. And then finally, by doing so, you'll be able to report an uplift across all of your core KPIs, whether this is traffic, leads, revenue, or equally the time this will save your team. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate for those of you that joined me in person. There are my contact details. Do get in contact. I love talking about this stuff, and I hope to hear from you all soon. Thanks so much.